Friday again. Welcome to Questions with Father Luke. I'm Father Luke of Covenant Anglican Church in San Marcos, Texas. And today's question is, what is Advent love? As we have been plodding through this Advent season, we've been focusing on Advent themes of hope, love, or hope, peace, joy, and love. And obviously today's question is, what is Advent love? And as we've been saying over these past weeks, Advent is a season. It's a season of honest reflection where we pause and we take an honest look at the world around us and within ourselves. And we see that, things are not right. They're not right in the world around us. They're not right in ourselves. But in Jesus, we have the promise of hope and of peace for which we can experience an amazing joy that's experienced even here and now. But we need to pause, right? We don't just rush to Christmas and rush to those things. It's good for us to pause, for us to consider why the things are broken in the world around us and why they're broken within ourselves. And the biblical answer to that is sin. Sin, everywhere we look, right? The effects of sin touch all of creation. No created thing is untouched by the corrosive power and effects of sin. But that isn't how God created the world. No, through the fall, what we call the fall, is when Adam and Eve sinned against their Creator. When they sinned against the Creator, the entire creation was bound up. It was corrupted, tainted, infected. And now everywhere we turn, the good possibilities of God's creation are misused, they're warped and exploited for sinful ends. And so on the one hand, we have this sin, which is like this invasive species. Albert Walters talks about it as being a parasite that infects and harms God's good creation. But then on the other hand, like sin is also the acts, right? It's also the rebellious thoughts, words, and deeds that spring up from our own hearts that have been twisted, and our own minds that have been twisted by sin. Our sins, these acts, thoughts, words, and deeds that we have, are hateful. They're rebellious acts against God, who is the good creator. He is the king of all creation. Now, the Apostle Paul says that sin are these thoughts, words, and deeds, right? Our sins actually make us enemies of God, but that God does something amazing. In Romans chapter 5, verses 6 through 8, he says, "For while we were still weak, at the right time Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for the righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would even dare to die. But God shows his love for us, in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Since therefore we have now been justified by his blood, much more shall we be saved by him from the wrath of God. For if while we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of the Son, much more now that we are reconciled shall we be saved by his life." So actually that's through verse 10. And now, this isn't a traditional Advent or Christmas passage, but we can clearly see that God is motivated here by love to do something for those who are weak, those who are ungodly, those who are even his enemies. And throughout the season of Advent, what we are hopefully discovering is that we aren't as put together as we would like ourselves to be, that we are weak, that we are ungodly, and because of our sin, we are enemies of God. But the loving action that God takes in this passage is allowing his Son, Jesus, to die on the cross in order to redeem and to reconcile us to himself. So salvation through the cross of Christ, we have to understand, was always part of God's salvation plan. And this means that Jesus coming into the world as a fully human child whose life was aimed at the cross, that was the beginning of this glorious, mysterious, powerful, beautiful act of love by God. So Advent love is about us recognizing this love of God in Jesus coming into the world. But it's also about us allowing then our lives to be transformed by the love that we see in Jesus' face, so that our love then can go out and cover a multitude of sins, continuing to reflect and proclaim Jesus' love. So Advent looks forward, or it looks back to the day in remembrance, right, of Jesus coming. But it also looks forward to the day when Jesus' love will fully and finally transform the entire world. Now, this is one of the reasons it's so important to be part of a Christian community, right? To help one another look at and experience the love of Christ as we look for his return. So why don't you visit us on a Sunday? Come and let's carry on the conversation, but let's connect.